Hello, and welcome to another second grade episode of Math Matters. My name is Mrs. Cook, and today we're going to be learning about how to collect and organize data in pictographs. Let's get started today by reviewing our skip counting by twos. Count together as you see the numbers appear on the screen, and don't forget we'll be counting backwards too. Are you ready? Let's count. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20. And backwards, 20, 18, 16, 14, 12, 10, 8, 6, 4, 2. What patterns are you noticing when we count by twos? Do you see a repeating pattern? That's right. The digits 2, 4, 6, 8, and 0 repeat. This can help us when we are trying to determine what comes next in the pattern. Let's count again, but this time some of the numbers are going to disappear. See if you can use the pattern to help you figure out what is missing. Remember to start at 2. I'll help you get started, but I bet you can count this one by yourself. Here we go. 2, and backwards, 'How did you do? Were you able to complete the pattern and count by twos forward and backward from 20? Way to go! In today's lesson, join us as we explore how to collect data and organize our findings to help us answer questions we have. One of the tools we have to help us organize information is a pictograph. Today, we will be learning how to make our own pictographs, as well as read and answer questions about data that someone else has collected and put into a pictograph. As you follow along today, think about how you are able to sort and organize data, show your data using pictures, and answer questions from data displayed in a pictograph. We will have an opportunity for you to reflect on your learning at the end of the lesson. It will be important today that you focus on these important portrait of a graduate skills during our lesson together. Pictographs are a helpful way to record and communicate your thinking with others, so be sure to have your writing tools ready to use. As we learn something new today, you may make a mistake or feel frustrated if you don't understand something the first time. Remember that we can learn a lot from our mistakes and that it's important to keep on trying and not give up. That's what makes you a goal-directed and resilient learner. It may be helpful to have a pencil or other writing tool on hand today so you can keep track of the data we share. You may also want to have some lined paper or graph paper if you have some, but plain paper is fine too. We'll pause here to give you some time to gather your materials. You may hear some words that are new to you today, so as we work together, try to make connections between these words and what we are learning. The first word is data. This is the information that we are collecting. Pictograph is the graph that uses pictures to represent the information that's collected. Row refers to the section going from left to right across the table or graph. And column is when we're talking about the part of the graph or table that goes up and down. A key tells us how to count the picture in the pictograph. We've been spending a lot of time outside lately, and I wanted to share a picture with you. Take a moment to see what's going on in this picture and think about, what do you notice? Let's talk about what you might have seen. Maybe you noticed a girl sitting on the stairs, or maybe the dog sitting next to her. Did you notice the tree? There are also a lot of sidewalks in this picture. Did you see the car? Or maybe you noticed the school in the background. Maybe you noticed something different. You can share that now. Great noticing. Now let's take a moment to write down something you might be wondering as you look at this picture. Maybe you are wondering, what are the girl and the dog looking at? Or where is the car going? Or maybe just, what's the dog's name? Were you wondering something different? You can share it now. While we have been outside enjoying fresh air and getting exercise, we've been noticing all of the cars that drive by. We wanted to know more about this question. What color cars drive by? And how many of each color? So we decided to investigate. To find out how many cars went by and what their colors were, we needed to collect some data. We decided to write down on a separate piece of paper the color of each car that drove by. There were just a few at first. But after a while, we had collected quite a bit of data. We realized that in order to make sense of the information we had collected, we needed to organize the data. There are many different ways to organize data. One way may be to just sort the data. Here you can see the sticky notes put in order with all the same colors together, and then the total number written on the top of each one. Another way to organize the data could be to make a tally chart. Similar to the sticky notes, all of the same colors are put together and the tally marks are used to show the total for each. Remember when making tally marks that they're made in groups of 5 and that 5th tally is drawn diagonally across the group. Another way we could organize our car data is to use pictures in a pictograph. A pictograph uses pictures or symbols to represent one or more objects. Let's zoom in on this one as we learn more about how to read and make sense of pictographs. Across the top of this graph it says color and number of cars. What else do you notice about this pictograph, and what might you be wondering? Did you notice the pictures of the cars? Why do you think we chose car pictures? Of course, we collected data about cars, so the picture matches our subject. You may have also noticed that some rows or lines going from side to side have more cars than others. And were you wondering why the colors were missing on the column on the left? Maybe you can make a prediction about what color matches the pictures of the cars shown. If you have your pencil and paper, you can go ahead and write down your prediction now. Let's zoom in and reveal some more details about our pictograph. The words white and blue have been added to our graph. What do you notice now, and how does that change your thinking? Did you notice that the row labeled with the color white only had 2 car pictures, and that the blue row had 3? Take a moment to think about how the number of white cars compares to the number of blue cars. Write that down on your paper now. Here are 2 statements you may have written about the blue and white cars. There are more blue cars than white cars. There are fewer white cars than blue cars. Was your idea similar to one of these statements, or did you say something different? Go ahead and share it now. Let's zoom in again and add more of the data to our pictograph. Do you notice what changed? How has your thinking changed now? More car pictures were added, and maybe you noticed the colors were missing. Take a moment to record on your paper what color car you predict belongs in each blank. Here are the final 2 colors, red and silver. Is that what you predicted? Did anything surprise you? There's one more important piece to add to our pictograph. It's the key at the bottom. The key at the bottom of the graph helps us make sense of the pictures in the graph by telling us the quantity or number of items each picture stands for. This key tells us that each car picture represents 2 cars counted when the data was collected. This will help us find the total number of cars for each color. Let's return now to the original question we set out to investigate. We wanted to know how many of each color of car drove by our house while we were outside. To answer that question, we collected data and organized it in this graph. To communicate to others what data we collected and what our graph is about, it is helpful to put a title at the top of our graph. What title would you put at the top of our graph? Go ahead and take a moment to think about it and write it down on your paper now. There are many different titles we could choose for our graph. A good title tells others about the question we were hoping to answer with the data we collected. Here is one title that would work. Cars driving by my house. Now we are ready to answer our question. How many cars of each color drove by? Let's start at the top and count how many white cars drove by. Don't forget the key at the bottom tells us that we must count by 2s for each car picture we see. I'm glad we practiced counting by 2s at the beginning of our lesson today. Take a moment to count and write down how many white cars drove by. Did you count 4? That's right. If we counted by 2s for each picture, it would sound like this: 2, 4. Now take some time to count the number of cars for each color in each row. Record them on your paper so you can remember your answers. We'll pause here to give you thinking time. How did you do? Let's count together and see. Looking at the red cars, we can count 2, 4, 6, 8. There were 8 red cars. For the blue cars, we can count 2, 4, 6. There were 6 blue cars. And finally, for the silver cars, there's only one picture, and we know that stands for 2 cars. So there were only 2 silver cars. Now that we know how many cars of each color were seen, can you use that information to find out how many cars drove by in total? We'll pause to give you time to think about it. How did you figure out how many cars drove by in total? I bet you were thinking you had to combine or put together all of the data or cars that were counted. If that's what you did, then you got the answer 20. There are many different ways to combine those numbers. Some people like to look for those friendly tens and add on from there, and some people may have just counted all of the cars by 2. If you didn't get 20, that's okay. Remember, mistakes help us learn. Be sure you wrote down or recorded all the numbers, and you can keep working on it at the end of today's lesson. Let's practice what we've learned with another pictograph. The title at the top reads, Favorite Pets. Then down the side it says cat, dog, hamster. At the bottom, the key reads, each paw print stands for 2 votes. Take a moment to use this information to help you make sense of the data collected in this graph. Try to write down or tell someone in the room 2 true statements about the information in this graph about favorite pets. We'll pause here to give you time to think. Are you ready to share your thinking? First, let's count how many people voted for each pet as their favorite. Did you remember to use the key to help you count the votes for each pet? Remember, each paw print stands for 2 votes. Here are the totals you should have gotten. Take a moment to check your work. Now let's look at some statements that other students have written about this pictograph. Maybe you can help me decide if each one is a true statement that can be answered with the data collected in this graph. I will read each statement and you tell us if it is true, meaning it's something that can be answered by the data in this graph, or is it false, because it can't be answered using the data in the graph. The first one reads, more people chose cats as their favorite pet than dogs. Is this true or false? That's right, there were 10 votes for cats and only 4 for dogs. So more people chose cats as their favorite pet. Number 2 reads, most people voted for birds as the best pet. You're correct. This statement is false. We do not have data in this graph to tell us about birds. Also, our graph is about favorite pets, not the best pets. We have to be careful to pay attention to the title so we know what question this information can answer. Let's read number 3. 2 more people voted for hamsters than dogs. Is this true or false? That's right, this statement is true. If we compare the number of paw prints or votes for dogs and hamsters, we can see that the hamsters have 1 more paw print, and that paw print stands for 2 more votes. In today's episode of Math Matters, we learned about the process of data collection and how to use pictographs to display data. First, we selected a question to be answered. Then we collected and organized the data. Finally, we learned how to use a pictograph to show our data and to help us answer our question. How did you do today working towards our learning goals? Reflect on your progress by giving a thumbs up if you feel like you got it, a thumb in the middle if you're still practicing, or thumb down if you need help from a teacher or someone at home. As you think about the learning goals for today, maybe there is something new you learned that you don't want to forget. Or maybe there's something we talked about today that you still have questions about. Take a minute to record your reflections on today's lesson and save them for the next time you're able to check in with your teacher. Mathematicians are skilled communicators who are goal-directed and resilient. During our lesson today, you worked on writing to record and communicate your ideas through graphing. You also persevered or kept on trying as you learned new mathematical ideas, even if it was hard. Thank you for joining me for another episode of Math Matters for 2nd grade. My name is Mrs. Cook, and I hope you'll join us again tomorrow as we continue to learn more about data and graphing. Have a great day.